Okay, so right here, I'm actually have the thermal imaging going live, and it's capturing in the Nreal Glasses above it in the thermal imaging camera, the Flir camera, and then I have a Nebula UI open, and then I have a Nebula window right here open with the thermal imaging streaming live. See? Okay guys, so as you can see, right now I'm looking through the glasses at the thermal imaging, and I'm actually streaming it through the Nreal Glasses into a Nebula Browser on the mixed reality glasses. And it's the desktop of the Windows browser here, and I'm actually looking live through the Flir Thermal camera, and then there is the Nebula interface, the Nreal interface. So that's the whole integration. It's incredible. I have thermal vision. To make it very simple, basically I can look at the thermal imaging that's coming in, and I'm capturing the video live, and I'd be able to see that in the mixed reality glasses in the room as well. And I've also made a smaller unit, which is the Thermal Hawk. The other is the Thermal Shark, but this is a small unit, the Thermal Hawk. And this would be great for industrial purposes, so you could have a hard hat on, and you could do thermal imaging for industrial security, safety, first responders, and all that. So instead of just making an app, I decided to make a whole hardware-software integration, and hopefully you can consider that as for the special prize. Thanks a lot, guys. Hi everyone, Cliff Baldridge here, and I'm doing a submission tonight for the Nreal Glasses, the Nreal AR Glasses, augmented reality glasses, AR Jam. So my submission is called the Thermal Shark, and the Thermal Shark is a complete system of software and hardware integration of the Flir Thermal cameras in the Nreal AR glasses in a cloud-based browser system on the Nreal Nebula Browser. So let me explain the hardware and the software. So I have the Nreal glasses here that project spatial computing browsers, the Nebula Browser, which is the Nreal browser in order to see the internet. So the Nreal Glasses is projecting multiple Nebula browsers in the room, and this is spatial computing, so it's like a hologram view of a browser. Next, I have the Flir Lepton thermal camera right here, which is capturing in thermal imaging video, a live video stream of thermal imaging video through the Flir Thermal camera here. This is then going from the Flir Thermal camera into a Raspberry Pi 4B 8GB. And this is a wearable computer, very powerful computer. And I also have battery here called the Pi Sugar, a very thin battery. So we can get about 6 hours of battery life by attaching the Pi to the Pi Sugar. And then through the Wi-Fi, we're actually streaming the live video through the Flir into the Raspberry Pi 4. And this also works with the $5,000 Flir Boson thermal camera. So this is the Lepton. We're talking 200 yards thermal imaging live video stream coming in, or the most professional $5,000 Flir Boson camera we can attach to this, or a hard hat. And I printed a 3D housing for the Lepton right here also. Now we talk about the software integration. The Raspberry Pi 4 here is bringing in the thermal imaging video capture stream live into the Raspberry Pi. On the Raspberry Pi desktop is the Raspberry Pi operating system, which is Linux. I have a special USB software program called GUVC View. And so from the command line, I can open up GUVC View and I can open up a live stream feed of what I'm looking at, because it's projecting and I'm seeing, because it's capturing in through this camera sensor here, the Flir Thermal camera sensor. So the live thermal imaging, the live thermal video capture is coming in to the Flir, then onto the Raspberry Pi here and onto the desktop, and this is headless. So the initial setup, you can actually plug in a mouse, a keyboard, and all that, but then I'm running this from the Windows desktop. So then you have VNC Viewer and VNC Server. So I have VNC Server connected to the Raspberry Pi. That allows me to then use VNC Viewer on the Windows desktop over here. So everything that I'm looking at is being captured by the Flir sensor, coming into the Raspberry Pi, into the GUVC view, and then the entire desktop with that live video feed and the entire desktop you can command and control is being cloud streamed up to my Windows laptop here, my Razer laptop, where I can actually control and command this entire computer headless right from my Windows desktop. So now here's where it gets really cool. What I've done is I have what I'm seeing is capturing in the Flir Thermal imaging. Then I have my phone here with the Nreal Mixed Reality app, the MR Space. So I plug the Nreal Glasses into the phone because the phone becomes the controller. And now it's connecting to the Nreal, and then I can turn on the MR Space, the Mixed Reality Space, and that's going to bring up the user interface, which is a hologram user interface. I can have multiple browsers, and I also am using the keyboard, and I'm also using the mobile phone as a pointer and a raise coming out, and the keyboard. So right now I'm looking at a YouTube video right here. So now what I've done is there is a special new app called Desktop Vision, and it's made for VR and AR applications so that you can do remote desktop from Windows live into VR or AR apps. So I've installed Desktop Vision onto the Windows computer here, onto the Razer computer. So this is like Windows Remote Desktop. But the key here is that it allows me to stream the Windows desktop up to a browser. So I can open up any browser in the world, and I can actually then control and see the Windows desktop. So we're going in from the thermal imaging, from the Flir capturing in the live thermal imaging video, into the Raspberry Pi, then that's on the desktop, the viewer. Then we're streaming that out through Wi-Fi to my Windows here through the VNC Cloud server and the Cloud viewer. So everything that I'm looking into, an entire Pi Linux desktop, is streaming through to the Windows laptop here. And then from the Windows laptop, that is streaming up to the cloud to this program called Desktop Vision. So with Desktop Vision, I can go in to any browser. So what I'm able to do now is, instead of making an app, and instead of making an APK or utilizing the NRSDK, I think it's better to create an integration like this that allows me to do a cloud-based Nebula Browser Flir Thermal imaging video viewer. So what I'm going to demonstrate is I'm going to look around here, and I'm going to capture in the Nreal Glasses the video view of what I'm looking through, and also the home screen of the UI of the Nreal. But then I'm going to have open this Desktop Vision in the Nebula Browser. So what this means is, instead of having just a Unity app, I'm able to have a multi-browser experience where you could just use the Nebula app, and I can have multiple windows. So I could have YouTube, I could have any kind of browsers open with any kind of information, multiple browsers, Nebula browsers in the Nebula, which is a browser in the mixed reality UI here in the Nreal Glasses. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log into a Nebula Browser mixed reality spatial computing hologram browser, and I'm going to be able to view and control the Windows desktop and the Raspberry Pi desktop, and view the capture of the Flir Thermal imaging live. You're going to see side by side the Nreal capture and then the Flir capture coming in live, and I'll show my hands and stuff. So that's the entire integration. So I decided to do a cloud-based browser, Nebula Browser integration with hardware and software with the Flir Thermal imaging, the Raspberry Pi, and then the software of the Raspberry Pi and Linux, the Windows desktop, the VNC cloud server and cloud viewer, and then going to this desktop vision, which is allowing me, which is a special remote desktop for AR and VR that just came out, that's going to allow me to command and control and view the Windows desktop in the Nebula browser in mixed reality and spatial computing in the room. That's the whole complicated long explanation here. But to make it very simple, basically I can look at the thermal imaging that's coming in, and I'm capturing the video live, and I'll be able to see that in the mixed reality glasses in the room as well. And I've also made a smaller unit, which is the Thermal Hawk. The other is the Thermal Shark, but this is a small unit, the Thermal Hawk. And this will be great for industrial purposes, so you could have a hard hat on, and you could do thermal imaging for industrial security, safety, first responders, and all that. So instead of just making an app, I decided to make a whole hardware software integration, and hopefully you can consider that as for the special prize. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, so right here, I'm actually have the thermal imaging going live, and it's capturing in the Nreal Glasses above it in the thermal imaging camera, the Flir camera, and then I have a Nebula UI open, and then I have a Nebula window right here open with the thermal imaging streaming live. See? Okay guys, so as you can see, right now I'm looking through the glasses at the thermal imaging, and I'm actually streaming it through the Nreal Glasses into a Nebula browser on the mixed reality glasses. And it's the desktop of the Windows browser here, and I'm actually looking live through the Flir Thermal camera, and then there is the Nebula interface, the Nreal interface. So that's the whole integration. It's incredible. I have thermal vision.